I spy with my little eyes something beginning with S. There's only one answer, and it isn't sky.
Nothing grows here. There's no water, nothing green or brown, except maybe in your overheating imagination. In this minimalist landscape, things are sharper, more clear. You start to observe and think things far from the distracting clamour and clutter of our visually noisy world. In this perfect zero, people find the still, infinite void, perhaps a spiritual centre, buried somewhere in their minds.
And in that blank and sacred space, like the desert itself, many find eternity.
How small you are in all this great loneliness, crushed between the weight of an endless sky and an empty earth. You discover the absolute insignificance of you. You'd almost go mad if you didn't invent God. No wonder the great religions all come out of the huge quiet of the desert. Arawan, in the middle of the Sahara. Once, thousands of people lived here. Now, barely 200 make it their home. It's a holy city, over 900 years old, the resting place of saints. From places like this, Islam, paired to its simplest forms, sprang forth. It has three things going for it: shade, water, and of course, God. But God either won't or can't stop Arawan drowning in the relentless ocean of the Sahara. Every morning the children of Arawan dig their way out of their homes from the sand that's covered their doorways and their floors the night before. They have a job to do. The desert is freezing at night, but because nothing grows there, there's nothing for fuel. The children have to go and collect the pellets of camel dung to burn for heat and to cook upon. Arawan exists because of its wells. Its name, translated in the local language, means water hauled up on a rope. These wells are the lifeblood to its people and the hundreds of caravans that pass through on their way across the Sahara Desert. To the people that live here, the Tuareg are the lords of the desert. There are 7 million of them, mostly nomadic, and they are fiercely proud. When Islam came south, at first it had a hard time with the Tuareg, for they would not bow to anyone, not even God. Fair play to them. What looks like to us a trackless wilderness, to the Tuareg is home. We see emptiness, and they see an absolute of everything, a network of wells and hidden roads that allow them to thrive. Bouge, is it true that you taste the sand to understand where it is you're going?
Mon père de mon maman, qui a fait ça. Son nom c'est Sid Ahmed. C'est lui qui a perdu son yeux après il continue à être guide. Lui s'il voyage, c'est les gens qui s'il voulait arrêter, il le sable pour là où ils ont quitté depuis avant-hier. Le deuxième jour qu'il voulait arrêter, il a demandé le sable, ils ont dit ça. Une fois comme ça, il dit que donc maintenant ils ont trompé. Ils ont retourné jusqu'à là où ils ont quitté hier. Donc les gens ont connu que lui, il connaît ça. C'est pas hasardement qu'il fait ça.
Like everywhere in Africa, it's the children's job to collect water from the well. The day is too hot, so they wait for evening. As dusk falls, each child has their own star and waits in turn for it to appear. When it does, it's their turn to collect the water. They're called the Children of the Stars. The desert separates Arab Africa from Black Africa, as the Atlantic separates Europe from America. Indeed, the very word Sahara means ocean. And within this vast waterless sea, the oasis is a lifeline, a truck stop, or more correctly, a camel stop. Camels can go 7 days without food. They go without water for weeks. They offer milk, meat, wool, hides, shade, and as I said earlier, fuel to burn, of course. And oh yeah, they never break down. But whether by camel or 4x4, everybody is heading to the gateway to the desert, once the centre of its own world and the definition of nowhere. The legendary city of Timbuktu. When I was a kid, I thought Timbuktu was in Ireland. Well, sounds like an Irish town to me. Only later did I understand that when we said from here to Timbuktu, we were imagining a place so impossibly far away, it represented the end of the world. It was the trade in salt dug from the desert mines that made this place, at that time a commodity more vital and as valuable as gold. It brought great wealth, and wealth that attracted Muslim scholars drawn to this isolated city, the edge of the great desert, to study and to teach. And with the teachers, of course, came education. Today, Timbuktu is an untidy, dusty mess of a town that seems to cling ever more perilously to its legend and to the crumbling shores of the Sahara. Timbuktu, empires of dust, kingdoms of goats. Africans had always educated themselves through their oral histories, passed on by storytellers and musicians under the shade of a tree. Like our stories of King Arthur or King Canute, it was history in its purest form, history as myth. African histories and theologies had never been written down because, like the Tuareg, most African people were nomadic. Carrying books and papers was just one more encumbrance in this lean, mobile world. But it was the scholars following the caravans who brought books and writing across the desert. And settling in Timbuktu, they turned the city into a great seat of learning. These books were, in their time, the most modern ideas of philosophy, maths, architecture and theologies. They are still studied for these thoughts and are genuinely timeless in their originality. But it is only when we can apply their ideas to the modern world or build upon them that they have a relevance beyond the purely intellectual.
ولقد رآه بالأفق المبين وما هو على الغيب ضنين وما هو بقول شيطان.
The stripped down thoughts of the desert need to be embroidered with the new complexities of the modern world if this society is to survive. And throughout the continent the same applies. The interface, the join between tradition and modernity is education.
Sunday morning, Timbuktu. The kids are at Quranic Sunday School and the California coiffeur is booming out its hip-hop. Maybe it's too obvious to point out the aspiration and the tradition coexisting like we found everywhere else in Africa.
But like the buried desert town of Arawan, God may also be preparing to sacrifice Timbuktu. The old port has dried up, and the ships now dock here 10 miles south of town. The sand is moving south. How powerful is this desert that it can move rivers and bury cities? I'm following the river down to Mopti, the port that's taken on the trade and cosmopolitan face that was once the glory of Timbuktu.
It's a 3-day trip from Timbuktu down the river Niger on one of these unfortunately named boats, a Pinas, to the port of Mopti. Mopti is really the interface between the Arab world and the black African world. This is the extreme limit of where Arabs will come to with their trading goods and exchange them here with the rest of the continent. Indeed, the Arabs call this huge river that flows right the way south through this place the Black Man's Nile.
The salt trade was the bridge that spanned the Arab and black worlds. It was traded weight for weight with gold. The African economies of the past were based on cattle. Cattle can't survive without salt. Gold is really only a lump of ore, but cattle are life. And still today, a 30-kilo slab dug from the ancient dried-up seas at the centre of the Sahara and mined still by these slaves, criminals and men from Arawan fetches 10 times its source price by the time it gets to the port of Mopti. And here in Mopti, it drives a whole economy as people gather to buy it and trade it on. In this town, you can see that this continent is as diverse and as varied as the whole of Europe and beyond. Different languages, different religions, different belief systems, different ways of life.
It's hot and dusty and stinks of fumes and fish and fires and goats, and I'm mad for it. There's people here from all over the desert and the rivers and the hills, and they're wearing their amazing different outfits. Being in Mopti is like walking into the bar in Star Wars or something.
In Mopti you realise there is no one African culture, only African cultures. The desert isn't just a mass of sand, it's an entity that drives its own climate. If it isn't a blinding, scorching sun, it's a howling, sandblasting storm. The Harmattan wind blows for up to 2 months a year, and when it does, it scours the face and the earth, scraping the topsoil off the ground and lifting it on boiling air thousands of feet into the sky. It's like a gritty Victorian pea souper fog, but thicker, a bean souper. But with the topsoil gone, nothing can grow, and so the desert moves on, a devouring, voracious, self-fulfilling body of sand. Drive for a few hours through this twilight zone of muted sound and flattened colour, and you arrive at Djenné, a city that belongs to an even older Africa. Strangely weird organic buildings that seem to grow out of the very earth, soft and bendy. Like the whole city is an entrant in the biggest sandcastle in the world competition. This magnificent mosque is one of the great buildings of the world, and perhaps the greatest one, made of mud. Walking here makes you realise that a mosque is simply a blank space built for clarity and thought. The desert brought inside, with a roof put over it for shade.
آيات الله فعلى الله توكلت فأجمعوا أمركم وشركاءكم ثم لا يكن أمركم عليكم عمة ثم ردوا إلي ولا تنزلوني فإن توليتم فما سألتكم من نذير
People have fled the temperamental Sahara throughout history, pushing some out of its overheating, dry, sandy embrace and up against other peoples and other lands. One group found the solution to their problem of climate change here. Along these ridges live the Dogon, a people who came here 1,000 years ago to avoid the overheating desert, the warriors of Islam and the raiding slavers. They made their home along this 150-kilometre slab of rock, the Bandiagara Escarpment. The displaced Dogon invaded an earlier people who lived here. And still today, houses teeter on ledges, crevices and caves serving as temples and burial grounds and sacred places to hide masks and fetishes. This is an Africa that seems old even compared to Timbuktu and even Djenné. There's a strange familiarity for me to being here. I recognise so much stuff in these villages that appear in our interior design magazines or in trendy flats as our idea of what's cool now. We think we're being sophisticated by owning what we call primitive art. In fact, it's their art that's sophisticated, and it's our primitive joy displaying it. The Dogon art and architecture and even their landscape and trees are beautiful, but weird and bendy and, well, odd. Still, nothing was as strange as what I saw one morning underneath the cliffs which had protected the Dogon from slavery. Here I found a group of nomads who'd camped overnight. The nomadic lifestyle gives an impression of freedom. But talking to these people, the Bella, I learned they are in fact unfree. They're just on a very long chain.
Chief, what's the relationship between the Bella and the Tuareg?
Biya burdami en den arande e cooda bellaɓe so ɓe coodi bellaɓe fuu jokka ɓe mara ɗum en hanono daaba ni ha ɗum laati sol ɓe laati bellaɓe muɓɓen.
Do you feel inferior to the Tuareg?
Eɓe ɓuri ka sabu ɓe mari ɗum en neɗɗo so a mari ɗum ena ɓura wona fuude yogaɓe ka ne heddi. joni no margol ngol kam mi wawa wiidema hande ana heddi tile ana heddi o kam mi wawa wiidema noon kay sabu hunde so a wayli fu a wawa wiide ana heddi.
Why don't the Bella do something to change this?
Milo am min ayo ɗum kam mi wawa wiide e milo am ɗum ka sabu hunde so a tawa fu wala ko mbawɗa wiide.
Do you want the Bella to be a free people?
Yalla ana wela e bellaɓe ana wela ɓe sanniya neɗɗo yalti margal ne wona ana wela on min kam mi wawa wiide mi yiɗa sabu dey mi mara e bellajo abada min ka hakkunde bellaɓe tan gommi miɗa latini ɓe baylo maɓɓe ɓe mari ɗum en eɓe ngaɗa ɗum ene hano ɓe duroɓe ni.
I'd come across in the 21st century a living example of a vicious, harmful tradition which education is thankfully changing. But when I was young, I viewed going to school as a form of slavery. The truth is, of course, it gave me the freedom to think, and it seems thinking will allow no man to be your master. Education, in the Bella's case, and in the case of any African who can get it, gives them their freedom. The Dogon ran here to escape the desert, but in that same desert, in that great emptiness, giant psychedelic thoughts were formed. We turned to the universe inside our minds. We supposed fantastical ideas of a God that became the world-conquering religions of today. And they conquered and were great because they wrote down their sacred texts in the Torah, the Bible and the Quran, and that became our history and our culture. The Dogon, like the Bella and Tuareg and other African peoples, didn't write their histories or their theologies. Instead, they lived them for themselves in theatre or dance.
This was history in its purest form, history as myth, history whose only limit was the outer regions of memory.
There are many ways of learning in the vast web of knowledge. Some of us learning around campfires in the desert, some under a baobab tree or a schoolroom, and some of us around the cosy electric glow of our laptops and PCs, but all of us, wherever we are, plugging into the world wide web of understanding.
Knowledge of who and what we are lets us understand our different worlds. It is how, in the end, all of us survive. I've been coming here for 20 years, as you know, and
in that time I've seen things no one should ever see, and I've told you about those things, and really no one ever needs to know about them. But tonight I've seen something that just makes me so angry again, and getting angry on television is useless. Nobody listens. They think you're a lunatic. We're in a part of the world in northern Uganda where there's a filthy little war that we've either forgotten about or know relatively little about. And every night for 8 years up this road have streamed thousands upon thousands of children from the outlying villages around this small little town of Kitcombe. And it's the parents sending their children up the long walk, 8 kilometres mostly, into the town to shelter and hide from the night from a lunatic, let's dignify him and call him a rebel commander, who believes he has supernatural powers, or he says he has, to terrorise everyone in this area. They believe that he knows where they are at any point of the day or night, and he can come and get them. And he's got a corps of killers around him. But to keep his rebellion going, every night he invades these villages for food, but mainly for children. This man, this thug, is a psychopath. His name is Joseph Coyne. I want to show you who he wants to terrorise, who he wants to brutalise. Have a look at this little person down here and her friend. They have the same name, Annalo Monica. Hi. Yeah, Monica, that's you. This is the bag she carries with her. Her mum packs it for her. It's her blanket for sleeping out on the pavements or under the verandas in the town. A little bit of food. This is her friend here. Hi, Monica. She looks after her because they have the same name. The bag is bigger than her. This rebel will take these kids. He uses the girls to carry stuff and as sex slaves, and he uses the boys as soldiers and torturers. It's just, I can't do slick television at the moment, I'm sorry. Look at this little fella. This is his blanket. That's what he's got for tonight. I don't think he's got hardly any clothes. He's certainly got no food.
Hello, White. How are you over here?
And this is a disgrace.
Quiet for what? I want to know you. They're taking that photo.
I don't know what else to say.
ma lewa rio kario chi kan ma cha lung kan no na du ki gang kwan cha pa chi da cha lua ka obien da mer cha borom cha pa rio chi ki bien ya ko chanta gu no da mer cha ka boro chanta cha ra gul ku ya to ka ma ka rong kan wa rio ki ma lo ti amu kana mo chel bor ke nga chel bor ke wari or ti diar ke tole pie wa ni ke wa ke chere wa ge bor luara mo diet ku ga en wari o en e ma wa to ke twer pie ba en ka ti ke chwe wa bor di le le ke no ge ta tan bor ka che bor ka ngar ke di ko chu da ka goi ana na chel ma na diet no pa no bien no ne bien ka ti chi wai ne ki cha nyer wen ki chwal gi nek dano ki cha nyer wen char gi nek dano ne gan ro chingi ya dape gi nyan chingi wen ki ren wa ka da wen ni ya no gi du ka cham.
These eyes have witnessed things beyond our imaginations. Horrors that we cannot encompass in our comfortable world. And all of this a wholly man-made disaster in which both abductees and soldiers alike are its victims. Those who survived were brutalized into carrying on the atrocities, ordinary boys and girls who should be in school or in the fields, forced to commit unspeakable horrors, or face having those same horrors visited upon them.
Now, I'm going to tell you a story about a little girl who was in this camp here, which is where the children come when they've escaped or been rescued from the Lord's Resistance Army, and they